Across Batman's storied history, different depictions and adaptations of him have come and gone, but there's one whose legacy will never be tarnished, and that's Batman the Animated Series. Guys, I'm Thomas.
I'm Merlin.
Together, we are the Comic Lads.
And today we're breaking down just how influential Batman the Animated Series truly is.
Before we get into it, guys, question of the week. Have you seen Batman the Animated Series? Or are you like a sweet summer child whose eyes have not graced the perfection that is this cartoon?
Yeah, the absolute flawlessness of this cartoon. If you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Yeah, like, we obviously want you to watch this video, but like, go watch the show, please.
Agreed. And if you have watched it, are you fans like us? Do you think that they kind of missed the mark in certain areas? Let us know your thoughts. Also, don't forget to like the video. It helps us out so much like you wouldn't believe. And consider subscribing. Become a comic lad.
Become a lad.
A fellow lad. Let's get into it. Yes. So, at the end of the day, I feel like obviously Batman in the main continuity in the comics is so influential. You know what I mean?
Yeah, without main Batman, we wouldn't have any other Batman.
But also it's like everything, there's ups and downs in its history.
Absolutely. When you have a story run for as long as, you know, the main two Batman comics have for like 80 plus years, you're gonna get some good, you're gonna get some mid, you're gonna get some poop, but Batman the Animated Series had such a like lightning in a bottle phase throughout its entire run where like it was just peak the whole time.
It condensed all the best things about Batman and refined all the best things of Batman
And made them better.
into one perfect package.
Yeah.
Wow, we're kind of finishing each other's sentences right now.
Oh, shit.
Are we a couple of comic lads or? It's fantastic.
Say that again?
The thing about Batman the Animated Series is that I think a lot of people don't realize the influence that it actually has on the Batman mythos.
Everyone's first thought when you mention Batman is gonna be somewhat derivative of the way he's depicted in Batman the Animated Series. That is the end-all be-all for Batman interpretations. He influenced like every Batman thing that has come out since.
Yeah, and it struck a perfect balance because, you know, Batman the Animated Series is a cartoon.
Yeah.
Its original intent is for kids at the end of the day.
Yeah, but they wanted to do something more than that.
And the different themes that they introduced throughout the show's history were so dark and gritty that they could kind of be appreciated by both, you know, kids just looking for an action scene like bam, pow, you know, Batman taking down the bad guys feeling, but also cater to more mature audiences where even now you can rewatch an episode and be like, oh my god, this is kind of a bit messed up.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing right now.
Or on the complete other side, you can be like brought to tears by how emotionally deep and beautiful the stories are.
Just because it was presented as a kid's show, you know, in its base form, it still wasn't afraid to tackle those more mature, dark storytelling and themes.
Absolutely. And by tackling some of these darker and more mature themes, the show managed to give us some of the best interpretations of every character in Batman's mythos.
Yeah, people don't realize that it actually it revitalized some characters and reinterpreted others.
And also added huge parts of Batman's lore. Things like Harley Quinn and, you know, Mr. Freeze's
Tragic backstory.
Yeah, Mr. Freeze's tragic backstory with his wife Nora seem like staples to us now, but they were created by Batman the Animated Series.
Definitely. And like we said, it was through those like more mature themes that all that was possible. And not only that, but just the stories and the way the show presented itself almost felt like a film noir type production. You know what I mean? It was, like we said, very dark, very gritty. It felt like an actual detective show at times.
Yeah, it did. And we talked briefly about how it technically is a kid's show. It doesn't feel like it for a lot of it. There are so many episodes throughout the show where you forget that it's a kid's show, and you also feel like the creators forgot that it's a kid's show too, because they're not really trying to cater to, you know, what kids like and like the bam, biff, pow, all that stuff like you said. It feels like their only goal was elevating this character to
its maximum potential.
Exactly.
That's a great point, and something that I think we should for sure talk about is that, like we said, this is the best version of Batman. So let's talk about Batman himself.
Yes.
Obviously, I mean, it's so freaking like well known at this point, but Kevin Conroy, you know, the GOAT of Batman voices, first introduced here.
Rest in peace to my boy.
Our boy. Everyone's boy.
Rest in peace to our GOAT.
Yeah.
Kevin Conroy. We love you so much.
And he brought such like a dark flavor to the voice of Batman.
Such a gravitas. Like, Batman before Batman the Animated Series was like, come on, Robin. And then Kevin came in and he was like, I'm gonna pull this voice out of like the darkest, deepest reaches of my soul and change the way we hear Batman's voice in our head forever.
I am vengeance. I am the night.
I am Batman!
Definitely. I mean, it's been said time and time again, but when I or you or anyone reads a Batman comic and they've been exposed to Kevin Conroy as Batman,
That's what you hear.
you hear his voice in your head, perfectly translated onto the page. And obviously it's not just the voice itself, but Batman as a character in the show. It was taken seriously. Do you know what I mean?
It was. And they didn't shy away from the trauma that his character carries in his soul. You hear it when Kevin switches his voice from, Playboy Bruce Wayne to dark, brooding Batman, you feel that his mind just went back to Crime Alley.
Definitely.
And that's where that voice is coming from.
Definitely. You can just in his voice alone, you can feel the trauma of the past coming through. And it feels like every subsequent depiction of Batman has kind of borrowed something from Batman the Animated Series, Sure. Like, I just rewatched The Batman the other day, Matt Reeves' The Batman, not the 2004 animated show, which we definitely will make a video on one of these days. And just the way that Robert Pattinson, navigates a crime scene and picks up these different clues, kneels down, touches different aspects of evidence and different clues, piecing them together.
He was alive when it was cut off. Ecchymosis. Around the wound.
It feels like the animated series.
It does, and it would just reminded me immediately of him going to a crime scene with his flashlight, you know what I mean? Navigating through the dark, piecing things together, and that's just one example.
Another part of Robert Pattinson's Batman portrayal that gives me flavors of Batman the Animated Series is just the way he talks to people when he's Batman. He's sassy and kind of snarky, which I love.
But he's just blunt.
He's not snarky, he's just like blunt. There's so many lines in the movie, but just like after he's escaped from the police and he's talking to Gordon, and Gordon's like,
Could have at least pulled that punch, man.
I did.
it's perfect animated series Batman.
100%. And it also felt like, we're talking about crime scenes, it feels like in Batman the Animated Series, Batman is first and foremost a detective. You know what I mean? Even more so at times than an actual superhero.
Very much so, because the show, it does lean into the fantastical. Like, we get all the supernatural characters and villains from Batman's mythos, but it's still very grounded, and he feels like a boots on the ground, helping the little guy in the Bowery of Gotham, rather than being like high-flying superhero Batman with the Justice League.
Yeah, and it kind of, physically, I feel like it toed such a perfect balance between, him being super, super smart, but not always physically, incredibly capable. Like, he was very limited, yeah. I feel in his arsenal and his physical ability.
Absolutely. He was not, broken Bat God, like you see in every other depiction now. Sometimes he doesn't even have his grapnel gun. He has, a rope with a batarang on the end of it, and then he, has to pull himself and, walk up the building. You don't see Batman do that shit ever nowadays.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the setting of the show, you know what I mean? They kind of adopted that 1940s, like we said, film noir aesthetic. Sorry. And so it makes sense, but at the same time, it created these stories where their greatness really came down to the mystery that they were trying to tell, and Batman solving these different crimes and really putting his title as the world's greatest detective first and foremost.
Absolutely. And they did such a great job with the mood in those types of episodes as well, where it often doesn't feel like the superhero genre. It feels like a noir mystery, and it has that eerie tone and that kind of unsettling vibe that you just love.
And I think Batman himself is obviously amazing, and the depiction, and even we're not gonna get into it too much, but the Batcave and Alfred and everything, it's all perfect. It's like a star cast.
Yes.
But even the way that they handle the villains, something that I feel like this show really pioneered is that it made the villains, besides maybe someone like the Joker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They made them very endearing and sympathetic, and for most of the episodes, you don't even just follow Batman. Some episodes just focus strictly on the villain itself.
Yeah, some episodes you're following the villain for 15 minutes, and then Batman shows up for the first time, and you're like, oh, my old friend, where have you been?
Exactly, and it made the characters of the show not just feel like Saturday morning cartoon villains. They were three-dimensional.
Yeah, no, they were like Shakespearean characters, with their own motivations and three-dimensional emotions.
And even if they're the bad guy,
yeah,
you can understand where they're coming from.
And sometimes you can even side with them.
Definitely.
I cite the episode Heart of Ice, where Mr. Freeze takes revenge on Ferris Boyle, the evil Gotham tycoon that basically made him into Mr. Freeze and killed his wife.
Yeah, that was an Emmy Award-winning episode, no?
As it should be.
Yeah.
And he's freezing him at the end of the episode, and I'm like, yeah, fucking freeze the shit out of this guy. I'm fully on board with Mr. Freeze. series.
And I also like it too because it brought a feeling of humanity to Batman too, when he discovers different characters' backgrounds and motivations, where even he, like the viewer, can recognize this person is evil, but there's also a level of them being misunderstood, and Batman sometimes even sympathizes with them, which is so refreshing to see, you know what I mean?
It is refreshing, because nowadays I feel like if we're telling a story where Batman finds out Mr. Freeze's backstory, he'll be like, oh, looks like he fell in this type of substance, and then that means this and this, and he just goes straight into detective mode. The animated series Batman watches the footage of how Freeze became Freeze and lost his wife. All he says is like,
My God.
because he's like shaken to his core, because this Batman, we haven't mentioned it yet, is able to have emotions.
Yeah, and he's able to, I feel like all the characters that he takes down in the show, you know that at the end of the day, he just wants the best for them, and you can feel that he wants them to rehabilitate themselves. You know what I mean? He wants to give them second chances, especially notably, we've talked about in the past, but characters like Two-Face, where they built up his friendship with Harvey Dent prior, and characters like you said, Mr. Freeze, where he's like, Jesus Christ, this guy is like so tragic.
Yeah, this guy is not the bad guy. Like, this guy deserves justice for himself.
Yeah, and like the world that they've built, I feel like everyone in the city, including Batman himself, are products of Gotham.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And just like they've been shaped by how terrible this place is, you know what I mean? For better or for worse.
And that's a great point that you make, because with these stories where Batman is empathizing with the villains and just trying to help them, it makes you feel like he's not just what assholes on the internet say he is, where he's like, he's a rich guy that beats up homeless people. It's like, no, he's trying to help everyone that he can, even the bad guys. And that's what people don't get. It's like, why doesn't Batman kill his villains? It's because, like, that's not the answer, you know?
Yeah.
That's not how you eradicate evil. You have to help people. You don't just get rid of people that don't work in your worldview. Batman has an open hand stretched out to everyone.
That's such a great point that I think we should dive into more, that Batman's there to help people, but I think we both love the fact that in this show, he doesn't just help people as Batman. A lot of people think Batman is just Batman. Like, the mask of Bruce Wayne is like, that whole line, like, oh, Bruce Wayne is the mask that I wear.
No, it's like, he's a person.
Yeah, exactly.
But Bruce is a person. He's not like, oh, I can't wait to get out of this meeting so I can put my costume on. It's like, no, he is a human being. He is his mother and father's son. He still is trying to take on their legacy. And I love that, because he's not just a playboy in the show.
Yeah.
Batman the Animated Series is Bruce Wayne, is everything that his parents wanted him to be.
And it's so refreshing too, because a lot of people forget that Batman helps Gotham for sure, but Bruce Wayne can also play a hand in that. And it's so nice in the show to see him in some episodes more in his Bruce Wayne persona.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Than Batman, trying to help people, trying to talk to people. Like we mentioned before with Harvey Dent, they're friends.
Yes.
Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent are friends, and it was nice to see him able to connect and help him as Bruce Wayne prior to even trying to help him as Batman.
And even after, he's still trying to help him out as Bruce Wayne.
And like, not just that, you get to spend time with him, at Wayne Industries, helping different people where he can.
Helping villains get jobs?
Yeah.
Once they're rehabilitated, bro?
It's also kind of nice because I like, there's something that frustrates me about some people's perception of Batman.
Yes.
Being like, there's too much like corruption in Gotham for like anything to be helped. Like, the only way he can help is as Batman. You know what I mean? And that like argument has always kind of not sat well with me, because I'm like, dude, this is a billion, like multi-billionaire.
Yeah, and
he could help out definitely in more ways than just beating up criminals.
yes, and he does. Like, people will talk about Batman as though he only spends his money on like new gadgets and Batmobiles and shit. And it's like, no. Wayne Industries at its core is a medical tech company. So you already know that Bruce is like funding the greatest leaps and advances in medical science. He has like a billion foundations throughout Gotham and probably throughout the world to help disenfranchised people. And it's like, do you see that in every issue? No, but because it's a superhero comic, you're not there to read that, but it's in the background. Bruce Wayne goes to fucking rescue missions in the poor parts of the city and like peels potatoes for people. I'm like, bro, he's out there.
There's something else that I also want to talk about between the duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman. It's something that we brought up multiple times before.
Yeah.
But this is a depiction of Batman where you can tell he's not always convinced that his mission to save Gotham as Batman is like warranted. And they explore in movies like, Mask of the Phantasm, that Batman at a certain level is fueled by his, the loss of his parents and his shattered past. Yes. And in stories like that where, a prominent love interest comes into his life, Andrea Beaumont, he kind of tangles with the fact that, oh my god, I can still help Gotham, as Bruce Wayne.
But maybe I can be happy.
And that's something that I don't see too often in other Batman depictions.
No, because he's so rigid in other depictions and will sacrifice anything for the sake of the mission. And I have a fundamental disagreement with that.
And that's something that, not to get too into the modern take of Batman, but this is something else we mentioned. But when he was gonna marry Selena Kyle, Catwoman, it felt like finally the writers and Batman himself were admitting, no, the mission and my happiness can go hand in hand.
Yes, they're not mutually exclusive. If you're gonna argue that Batman can't get married, he shouldn't even be able to raise his son. You know what I mean?
So true.
And take him to school. He can have a wife.
Yeah, multiple sons actually.
Yeah, he's got fucking 12.
Yeah. Batman himself, the voice that Kevin Conroy injects into the character, exploring Bruce Wayne and Batman, it was just so perfectly done. Another thing that's underappreciated about Batman the Animated Series is the art style.
There's not a single other cartoon that looks like this show. It is so masterfully crafted and hand-drawn every step of the way. The fact that they drew everything on black paper, they colored on black paper so that every square inch of the screen just has this dark, grimy undertone to it. It just creates such a beautiful, rich atmosphere whenever you watch the show, because the caveat of drawing on black paper means that whenever there's light on screen, it shines through that much more because the background is so rich and textured.
It's textured.
You know what I mean? It look every shot of the show looks like a painting.
100%. And I think there's also something to say about Bruce Timm's style, not just the dark feeling and the dark tones that they have visually. Bruce Timm's style with Batman translates so well because it's not too detailed. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of an overwhelming picture. Every picture in the frame, like you said, feels like a painting, but it's also so this is kind of a weird thing to say, but visually digestible.
It is.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And we need to tip our hats off to the animators as well. They just cared. You know what I mean? You can tell that they were having the time of their lives animating every frame, because nowadays you're never going to get a shot in a Batman cartoon where while Gordon is reaming out Detective Bullock while they're on a helipad and the helicopter is whirring above them, they just for some reason do this little shot of Gordon pushing up his glasses for 1 millisecond, and you forget that you're watching a cartoon. You feel like you're in this world with these characters.
It's kind of a product of its time now, but like you said, the hand-drawn animation, it has such a distinct flavor that nowadays I feel animation can't recapture because everything's so digital. It feels lifeless. It feels like it's missing its character. And I think notably, I want to bring up Batman, the Caped Crusader.
Yes.
That show, it's by a lot of the same people that did Batman the Animated Series, but it feels like it doesn't have the heart that animated series had. It doesn't. And I think I was even texting you and I took a frame from Batman Caped Crusader, and I was like, dude, this is touted as a freaking, another dark, gritty film noir style show, but it doesn't feel that way. And I recolored it. We'll put up the things I did on screen, but it was missing that dark feeling that Gotham and Batman is supposed to have visually. Do you know what I mean?
I totally agree. And it had a lot of the ingredients that it needed. It had phenomenal film noir music, and it had a lot of the design work really well, but it didn't have that grime. It felt clean, it felt gritty, it felt airbrushed.
Flat.
Yeah, flat, and it didn't feel like Gotham.
But when you go back to Batman the Animated Series and you see Bruce atop a gargoyle looking down and, surveying a villain or a person of interest.
With hand-drawn raindrops.
Oh my god, and the contrast of the dark tones and the lights and the red sky in the background, it just had such a perfectly realized vision of Batman.
It did.
That the comics are amazing, but this world is just one that you want to revisit constantly.
It is. And I want to talk about something that you brought up before. The chronological aesthetic of the show is so unique and weird and not found anywhere else, where like there's computers and stuff and like digital shit, and like Batman's tech is years ahead still of anything that we have today, but they still have black and white TVs. You know, even Batman's computers are in black and white. The cars are like in a kind of 30s and 40s aesthetic.
I love that too, because Gotham in comics and in the show kind of is depicted as the city that's stuck in time.
Yeah.
And that's such a perfect like visual translation of Gotham's inability to improve itself.
Yes.
And advance just through the aesthetic, the cars, like you said, the black and white TV.
Yeah.
It all just works hand in hand to feel like a city stuck in time.
It does. And then it feels even more like that when they expanded their universe and did things like Superman the Animated Series, which takes place at the same time as Batman the Animated Series, but when you go to Metropolis with Superman, it's futuristic.
Yeah, the city of tomorrow.
Yeah, and the cars look like fucking something out of like Stark Industries, but literally just like across the country, Gotham feels like you're in the 1940s. There's blimps.
Yeah, I love it.
Which I love so much, and I love that they've really kept that element in like pretty much every other version of Batman in the comics, where like Gotham has police blimps that surveil
Yeah, it's like so good.
the city streets. It's so weird and creepy. I love it so much.
Yeah, and it just visually translates to Batman trying to improve Gotham wherever he can, you know? And like we said, like, the range of Batman's influence in this show can be felt even today. Touching once again on voice actors like Kevin Conroy, they interviewed and auditioned like
200 people.
200 people for Batman, and at one point they were even considering like, this show might not be made, we can't find the right voice for Batman. And Kevin Conroy came in as a stage actor, you know what I mean? And he auditioned, and of course the rest is history. But people don't realize it all started then. It's led to projects and productions that we adore even to this day.
First thing that popped into my head is the Batman Arkham franchise.
Yeah, which a lot of people have stated feels like an actual continuation of the Batman the Animated Series universe. Similar aesthetics, similar stories, and of course, something that we actually, I don't know how we haven't mentioned it to this point, Mark Hamill as the Joker. That like this show created not just Batman's definitive voice and feel, but also Joker's.
Guys,
Luke Skywalker, bro. Like, who would have thought?
there is no other Joker that can ever or will ever come close to Mark Hamill's Joker.
Yeah, and him and Kevin Conroy's depictions are so like heavily intertwined that whenever there's a project, you know, whenever there's been a project in the last few decades with, you know, Kevin Conroy as Batman,
Mark will always join him.
yeah, you just can't have one without the other if they're to appear in the same project. You know what I mean?
You can't, and it's so heartbreaking, but it feels right now that since Kevin Conroy's passing, Mark Hamill has stated that he won't voice Joker again.
And it makes sense.
And I think that's so sad, but so beautiful that like it's like, this might just be like fanfic in my head, but like they feel like brothers, and I don't want to hear them apart.
Yeah, and it also kind of reaffirms that even as the characters that they're playing themselves, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. You know, you can't have one without the other.
You can't, and they play so well off of each other.
Yeah, and just like Kevin Conroy, when I read a comic featuring the Joker, there's no other voice in my head that plays but Mark Hamill.
Always. And it's so unique and perfect that like I have never heard anyone do a flawless impression of him. It's like impossible. Troy Baker does a really good...
I do really like Troy Baker.
Troy Baker does a really good interpretation of it, but it's still like no one can get that special inflection that he has on the voice.
Like, just even Mark Hamill's laugh alone is so distinct.
Yeah, and there's so many different versions and such a range of laughs. Like he goes from like the to like the
It's just so funny that Mark Hamill can go from like a historic franchise like Star Wars, where I was gonna go and touch it, get some power converters. No, exactly. Like, there is good in you, I can feel it. To playing the Joker.
yeah, like the most evil, diabolical, ridiculous character, and he made it his own. For me, he finished like creating the Joker. You know, before that, I feel like the Joker was kind of like almost there. Like they had all the ideas, they had the look, but his voice was never there.
He felt unfocused.
He felt unfocused and like too different and like unsure of himself and like kind of like bipolar as a character.
I also feel like Batman the Animated Series kind of, I don't want to say it popularized Batman because, you know, Batman 89 had come out. The whole world was, you know, reeling with excitement from that depiction and that movie and the huge success that came with it. But it really feel like Batman the Animated Series took everything from that and like funneled it into like a generational depiction.
They took everything that movie did right and everything that the comics had done right up to that point from every corner of the mythos and distilled it into this one kind of perfect main, like, this is the prime multiversal version of Batman. You know what I mean?
And I feel like with the excitement of 89, it kind of solidified a generation of Batman fans. And it's even lived up until this day where, you know, you grew up with Batman the Animated Series. I was kind of late to the party. You know, I grew up more with the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, but even just revisiting it now, like, the stories it tells and this version of Batman are just, they're timeless.
They are timeless. And there's something that I'm gonna go back to and relive probably like once a year for the rest of my life. You know, like, I've seen these episodes a million times and they're just as special each time I revisit them, and they hit me in the same way. You know, like, there hasn't been a single time I've watched Robin's Reckoning and not teared up when he's saying goodbye to like the elephant.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
So like we said, guys, this show is such a hallmark in Batman's history. Let us know what you guys think. Have you watched the show? Are you late to the party like I was up until, you know, 5-6 years ago? And do you agree with us that this is the best depiction of Batman to date? Also, don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed. It helps us out. Subscribe for weekly content, and we'll see you guys later.
We love you.
We love you dearly.
Peace.
Peace. Peace.